Hey, it's 11:40 The Bet and Audacy Sports, and of course, our friends watching on YouTube or social media. We are joined by a friend of the show, one of the best, one of the voices of Silver and Black today, Scott Branson. Be sure to follow him right here at the start of the interview on Twitter at LV Gully. And Scott, welcome in. We'll start off with the Super Bowl, my friend. Patrick Mahomes, already an all-time great.
Yeah, it's funny because I said I know that the MVP award's always going to go to the winning team, but listen, Jalen Hurts had a better game, so I'll just start by saying that because he did. The one fumble, yes, I understand that he just dropped the ball. What are you going to do there? But overall, look, Patrick Mahomes, is he an all-time great? He's got two Super Bowls now. I think he's got a ways to go before I think he makes that, but he certainly, to me, is still the best quarterback in the NFL despite the fact he didn't put up massive numbers in this game. The reality is, though, in the second half, he had his team on the march. They came out, they scored. They needed to do what they needed to do. And he's also got the benefit of an amazing head coach. I mean, there's just no questioning how good Andy Reid has been. But I know it's hard for Raider fans and for fans of other teams to admit it, but Patrick Mahomes just gets it done, and he is the best quarterback in the NFL. Where he lands all time, we'll have to wait another couple of years, but he's certainly on that road, isn't he?
No, 100%. And AFC West, Chiefs win the Super Bowl. Chargers finally make the playoffs. Broncos hire Sean Payton. Where's your concern level with this division?
I said it on our show earlier in the week that, listen, the Raiders have to get things right this offseason. They don't have to fix everything. That's not possible. Fans who think the Raiders are going to be playing in the Super Bowl in Vegas next year this time, I would tamper your expectations down a little bit. That's not going to happen in my book. So you got to chip away at it, but they got to make progress, Adrian. They've got to draft well. They've got to sign the key free agents. They're going to help this team get on the road. I think they need to get a young quarterback that they can build around for all the reasons that you just mentioned in the AFC West. But it's not going to happen overnight. But if they don't, if they make too many wrong turns in the interim, they could find themselves way behind in this division because everybody got better. I'd argue the Chargers head coach is still a problem for them. They have the talent to win down there. I don't have a ton of faith in Brandon Staley. So the Raiders got that going for them. But overall, they've got to pick up the talent level. They got to figure out the quarterback position. They got to build a defense if they're going to stick in this division because the rest of it's going to pull away.
And, the real reason why I wanted to bring you on here is kind of a formal goodbye to Derek Carr as everything is official. He is technically not a part of this roster as we speak. So to start everything off, I figured I'd go into my history as being a radio host at music stations and recite these lyrics. So if you could just give me a minute, and this is how we'll start off the Derek Carr conversation. Damn, who knew all the planes we flew, good things we've been through, that I'd be standing right here talking to you. Bought another path. I know we love to hit the road and laugh, but something told me it wouldn't last. Had to switch it up, look at things different, see the bigger picture. Those were the days. Hard work forever pays. Now I see you in a better place. Simply put, Scott, your thoughts?
Well, not surprised, and certainly your lyrical genius there, and bringing that into it is fantastic. But it's true. Listen, this is life. Things happen. Things don't work out for 100% of the time, and so you have to learn to roll with the punches. Derek Carr is now in a great position for himself. Derek Carr believes in himself. We've been hearing it. We hear the PR machine, his brothers out there doing everything. And so they believe that what was holding Derek back was the Raiders. So we'll get a chance to see if that's right. We can't say for certain if it is or if it's not. That'll prove itself out over time. But certainly the Raiders and Derek Carr parting ways. It's always hard, especially I think for fans after seeing somebody for 9 years there as the face of the franchise, seeing the guy grow up in essence in your organization and then having to say goodbye to them. But I think it was inevitable. I think this was something that had to happen for both sides. I said it early in the year as things weren't looking good that an amicable divorce. Now it turns out it has not been amicable, as we've seen a lot of chatter here back and forth. Especially we saw the Vic Tafur piece in the Athletic this past week. saying that the team was leaking information and Carr was saying bad things about the organization, all sorts of stuff going on. We'll never know the truth there unless people want to come forward and tell the truth. But other than that, I think that we saw this happening. This team has to move forward and think about the future. You're not going to build a team for 5 to 6 years from now around a 31-year-old quarterback. So you have to figure out what you're going to do at that position. And I think for fans, listen, if you didn't like Derek Carr, fine, you get to move on now. If you love Derek Carr, great. But the arguments back and forth just need to stop. It's over with. And I think it's time for both sides to move on. You thank the guy for his service. He did his best. I don't think anybody can argue that. And it's time to move on from both sides.
And let me be a little positive. Just a quick sidebar. What's your favorite memory of Derek Carr as a Raider? Do you have one?
I'll say it was last season when amongst all the Gruden trash that happened with the emails and of course the Henry Ruggs deadly accident. I give the guy credit, man. I mean, you talk about it's tough to lead, period. But when you lead in times of crisis and times of uncertainty, that is the most difficult time to lead. And Derek Carr stepped up. He did that. He helped keep that locker room together. And I always look back at that year and them making that playoff run in what would be his last opportunity to do so as one of the shining moments in his career as a Raider.
And looking at this whole scenario, this whole past year in totality, would you say that the Raiders front office as a whole handled this situation with Derek Carr properly?
So I think it's difficult to say because we don't have all the details. We have a spurned lover, if you will, in Derek Carr, and mostly his brother, who tends to be his mouthpiece out there, as you talked about, restaurant manager. Get me the manager. Was that get me the manager vibe
Yeah.
that you said the other week? So we don't know, but here's the thing: they all knew, all parties involved knew going into the season that this was a prove it year for Derek Carr, and so how it ended, what was said between the parties, we don't know. So I can't really say if they handled that well because we don't know the details. But from the get go of saying, listen, you have a year to prove yourself to your new GM and your new coach, and it didn't go well. So I was not surprised by it and how they handled it. I think the only thing that I would be really critical of the Raiders on is how they handled the clause in his contract, which tells me they really believed they were going to work it out. I know some on that side of the equation have said they never wanted Derek Carr. They were just looking for a way to set him up to get rid of him. I don't believe that because you don't put that no trade clause in this contract, which prevented them from getting any compensation back for him before cutting him loose on Tuesday. You don't do that. So I think that was the mistake they made, was they really believed it. And if they weren't sure, and that's the kind of deal they wanted to do, then they probably should have thought a little more about how to protect the organization so he had more value on the trade market.
And let me play the side of the Raiders fans that are upset that they got nothing back from him. That kind of I thought this thing that I saw, which basically said over the past 3 years, you look at the three big quarterback trades that have happened. Of course, you got Deshaun Watson, you got Russell Wilson, you got Matthew Stafford. All those combined netted 7 first-round picks combined and several additional picks. So from that perspective, do you think that the Raiders failed in not getting anything back? Or does that speak to what you were just saying and the mistake of giving them that clause?
No, I think it failed from the perspective of how the contract was structured. And all the other deals you mentioned, contracts were structured very differently. And so the player had a lot of incentive to approve a trade and to move on. And the team did as well because they were going to get compensation in return. So that's where I'd be really critical of Dave Ziegler. The only other time I've been critical of him really has been some of the free agent signings they had last year that I thought were a mistake. But other than that, I think if you look at these situations, it's very easy to look at those contract, Stafford, to look at Russell Wilson. That's just a whole different ballgame with what they were dealing with on both sides. And so in this case, I just can't be that critical other than what I said about the Raiders maybe not doing what was in their best interest when they structured the contract for Derek going into this season.
And I like the synergy we're having right now, Scott, because you brought up Dave Ziegler. And I think this might speak on the point that you said earlier in the interview, saying that the Raiders need to get this right. But to me, letting go of Derek Carr, finally really putting your hands on this roster and building this to what they want, how much pressure is on McDaniels and Ziegler right now after this move?
Oh, I think there's a lot of pressure. I don't think it's necessarily because of this move. In fact, a lot of people keep saying, well, they're going to try to get Rodgers because Josh McDaniels got to show. Josh McDaniels, yes, admittedly so, should be on the hot seat. He should be, coaching wise, not Dave Ziegler, but just Josh McDaniels, unless Adrian. And again, this is where the nuances come in and where the chess versus checkers comes into play, which is if Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels went to Mark Davis, the owner, and said, listen, we're going to go young at quarterback. We don't want to trade. We don't want to go get Aaron Rodgers and give up a boatload of draft picks. We're going to go young. We're going to go with a Jarrett Stidham or somebody else like that and get a rookie and let them grow into the role so we have our quarterback for the next 10 to 12 years. Then we have to get some grace here. We have to get a grace period. Yes, you're not happy with the way things went last year. Nobody is. But that means if we go that route, we might have another season, at least one, that's going to be rough. And so if they have that, if they've had that conversation, then I don't think there's a hot seat for either one of them. If they've not had that conversation and the Raiders do something different and go get Aaron Rodgers or someone else to show that, hey, we want to try to win and move now, then I think the hot seat for Josh McDaniels remains, even if they also draft a young quarterback at the same time. So I think it's a little bit of a nuanced piece there. But again, after this season, this draft, this free agent class, we're going to know a lot about what Dave Ziegler is able to do. And so I think you and I, when we have this conversation next year, we'll have a much better sense for where Dave Ziegler stands and how he's been able to do in his first two seasons running the football operation.
No, 100%. And also for those at home, knowing that Derek Carr is now not on the roster, we're looking at around $50 million in cap space for them to use or to save up or just use a little bit here in free agency. And we have plenty of time to talk about the Raiders, the draft. Are they going to trade up? And there's a lot of conversation to be had because there's a lot of directions to your point. But before we get you out of here and get all the plugs in for Silver and Black today, I want to give you the floor. And kind of if you have any last words that you want to say to David and Derek Carr.
Well, listen, I think anytime you move off from a player again that's been with the team for so long, his only team coming out of college with all the promise that he had, it's tough when it ends this way. And I think that again, you can wish a guy the best for going on. And if you're a fan, you can say, hey, listen, we're going to miss Derek Carr if you're a Derek Carr fan, and still see that he goes off and does well. Except when he's playing your team, of course. So for Derek Carr, you got to hope he goes off and can prove what he's told everyone and what his family's told everyone, which is he deserves a better chance. And I would agree with him. Listen, it was dysfunctional for him a lot of the years in the Silver and Black. At the same time, don't feel sorry for him. He's gotten a lot of money. He's had opportunities there as well. You can't blame all of everything on the organization. The player has to take some responsibility, but I wish him the best and hope he does well. And as far as the Raiders organization goes, they gotta think about the future. I hope that they are bold, go after a young quarterback. I know some people want him to wait till next year to try to get a quarterback, but guess what? You never know what happens. You could have a sneaky good year, win 10 games, and suddenly you're picking 23rd or 20th, and you don't get a chance to get up and get a quarterback. So if they like one of the quarterbacks, I say be bold, go get your guy, sign a Jarrett Stidham, build that defense now, save some money there on the quarterback, build the defense, get as many rookie contracts as you can, turn this thing around on the long term, not on the short term.
You heard it here first. Scott says, do not tank for Caleb Williams. Before we get you out of here, what's on deck for Silver and Black today? Because just because it's the off season doesn't mean the show stops, correct?
No, Adrian, you know that better than anybody. So we continue. We have less shows per week, obviously, with the season winding down, but you can still catch us. And we got a lot of details come up. We're going to do some kind of debriefing on what happened this year, look at some positions over the next couple breakdowns over the next couple of weeks, as well as start to really look forward to the draft and around free agent movements and targets for the Raiders and what's going to happen there with them. So I would just tell people, go subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Just look for Silver and Black today. And then, of course, you can check us out on 98.5 The Bet as well in Las Vegas on Sunday mornings. And you can follow us on Twitter, SNV Today, and I am at LV Gully, and my partner is Mo Moten, who you have on all the time, and you can follow him on Twitter as well.
Well, listen, we're lucky enough to have you guys on all the time, giving us our Raiders insight and coverage. As always, thank you for always being a phone call away, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and I want to congratulate you before we go to Adrian on the sponsorships you're getting, man. See, people are seeing the value of what you do and how you're an up and coming star in the world of media. There you go. See, your way. Now I'm craving hash browns and eggs, so thank you.
There it
But
is.
it's it's all good. So congrats on that, man. We appreciate you too, and look forward to talking to you next time.
No, I appreciate the kind words, and as always, we will talk to you here soon. Take care, Scott.